Hey everyone, this is Dylan Murphy with Navitome. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to jump right into it in the interest of time here. So, I'm the CEO of Navitome, and we're a software company that helps you. It's a platform for you to develop sales enablement. We'll get into a little bit more of what that means, but what we're going to talk about in this webinar is how to make your sales enablement more actionable. And it's lessons that we've learned working with customers from previous jobs, our whole history at the company, and it's stuff that you can do, regardless of what you use today or what you're going to use in the future. So we're really excited to share this stuff with you, and thanks again for joining. It means a lot to us. So a little bit more about myself. I started my career right into sales training. But I was on the receiving end of it, which was really great. So after I graduated from graduate school, I went to IBM and trained for a year to become a software seller. And I mean, it was really a fantastic opportunity. I had no idea at the time just how valuable it would turn out and kind of mold my career. But yeah, I was on the receiving end of 12 months worth of sales training. And it was about 6 months focused on pure sales and about 6 months focused on selling very technical solutions and learning technology. And I really enjoyed it. When I came out of that program, I had to, become an adult and actually do the job like they were training me to do. And I went out in the field and started selling. But I really liked that aspect of taking people from out of school and getting them to be sellers, and particularly with very technical solutions at the time, because it was challenging. Right? It was like this really interesting blend of technology and having this technical base, but also understanding content and learning how to communicate that in a way that helped your customers. So what I did was I ended up getting involved in the group, and the next 4 or 5 years of classes, and being a trainer for them and coming back and giving presentations and mentoring people one-on-one. So I started to get a feel for how to develop other sellers, right? And I saw what works and what doesn't, and I took my own experience of what worked on me and what didn't, and I started to see kind of patterns there, and it was really interesting. Then I moved into, then I really understood a few products very well, so I started doing more worldwide enablement. Still in my job as a seller, as a technical seller, I do these worldwide enablements on specific products, right? So I work with product management and development and share my experience in the field, and I'd go out and train the sales force. And then I moved into product management, and this is where things really got interesting for me. And they were interesting for a couple different reasons. They're lessons that we're gonna present here, and things that can help you. Right? So I was managing this product, IBM, and I was in a situation that I'm sure many of you listening today are in. Right? So you need to drive revenue. You need to sell the product, right? But you don't have a lot of control over changes that would help sell the product better, right? Like, you can't just immediately come out with that new feature or immediately change all the marketing or do these major shifts. So we had these longer term roadmaps and plans that were pretty well set. And, so I couldn't change too much, but I knew I could train the sellers for my product and influence them to sell more. So I did that, right? And it ended up working out really well. So I took those lessons that we're going to present to you guys today, and I ended up kind of winning the love and attention of the sellers, and they had a lot of things to sell, right? So, getting their attention and teaching them how to sell my product went a long way when it came to looking at everything they had in their portfolios to sell. So that was really interesting. The other really interesting takeaway for me from product management was I ended up being like a brand representative for Asia. So I would go out and give sales enablements in China and other parts of the world, and I really got to see different styles and see what worked there and adjust things. And it, you know, it all kind of came back into my bag of tricks when it came to training sellers. And then I moved into the startup world. I had a company before Navitome and now Navitome where, you know, we've had a few sellers, done some training there. It's very different, but a lot of the lessons kind of carry through. So regardless of what size company you are, there's definitely some good takeaways here. So in all the presentations I've given and heard people give, practice ones, real ones at conferences to sellers, I frequently hear these similar things, and these are things that drive us crazy at Navitome, and they drive what we do. Right? So I'm sure everyone has been to an enablement or a presentation where somebody has your attention or at least has you physically there for an hour, and then they say at the end, if you're going to take away anything from this presentation, I want it to be this. Or, you know, if we know that you're only going to retain 5% of this content, so let that 5% be this. I mean, this is just a reality of kind of presenting a lot of information to someone. You know, they're not going to retain everything. But we think in terms of sales enablement that this is like really a problem, right? You wouldn't do this with your money or, you know, other important assets that you have, time. But yet, you know, we're so quick to accept that you can get someone together for a training, fly them into Las Vegas, Florida, headquarters, wherever, and present to them for 8 hours straight, and they're only going to retain like small points from each thing. We think that, you know, this is driving a lot of what we do, and we think there's better ways to have those sellers retain knowledge. And then the second quote really needs a little more context, but I'm sure you can relate to it too. So I was talking to a friend of mine who is in sales, and we're based out of the Boston area. I live right outside of Boston, and we were talking back and forth. He was coming to Boston to do an enablement that his company was putting on, and it's a pretty big company. I knew a lot of money was going into it, and I was talking to him about Navitome, and we were going to go out to dinner. We had plans that we were both too busy, unfortunately, to do, but I was in tune with what was going on. He was coming up for this big enablement. So after the enablement was done, I texted him and I asked him what his schedule was and how it went. And he said, Boston is a great city. I'm going to come back. And I'm like, okay, but what about the enablement? And he really didn't say that much. And I kind of just, it made my stomach turn, because I was like, this is such a problem. You know, we spent all this time talking about enablement, yet what's on my friend's mind after the company spends hundreds of thousands of dollars to put this event on? People are here for a week, traveling from all over the place. You know, what he's talking to me about is the city, and I'm sure everyone can relate to that, right? You come out of a training, it was like, oh, it was so great to see this person. It was so great to do this, do that. But we think that you can hold enablement events, deliver enablement where people's first thought after it is what they learned and how they're going to sell more. And a lot of that is driving what we're going to present and show you today. So what we're going to actually talk about, first we talk about when sellers learn in different phases. And we're kind of going to talk about that quickly to establish the baseline, so that when we go into tweaks that you can make to make your enablement less costly, have it hit harder, be more effective, and get it out faster, you kind of have some baseline for that. After we talk about those two things, we're going to dive into real examples of how you can put this stuff into practice. All right? And we're going to show you through Navitome. So my teammate Dylan Husted's on. He actually went through a lot of this at Navitome, so he's got a really interesting perspective. He's going to give you a demo on Navitome, so it kind of sets the context of what Navitome is. And we can talk a little bit about how, you can really do this in any tool, or not even in a tool. We just make it a lot easier when it comes to customization and delivery and communicating and all that stuff. So those examples we're going to dive into. First one is how to use practice activities to validate that reps are ready and give them real practice. The second one is how to take those activities, put them into those bigger necessary learning curriculums where you mix in more introductory material, listening, reading. Then we're going to talk about tools that your sellers can use in the moment, or right before talking to a customer, right after. They're very granular, they're very personalized so that they can quickly learn and prepare. And then we're going to talk about unlocking all that knowledge that's in your sellers' heads and how to create an infrastructure where they can share it so easily that they actually do it and it benefits the whole sales force. So, the first time sellers are learning about a new topic is, there's a few times when this happens, but we call it the preparation phase. Think about it when a seller joins a company or a new product rolls out and they're learning information for the first time, right? An example of this is onboarding. You go in, you fly to the headquarters, you learn about the company, the products, and what your role for a week, and then you go out in the field, right? We hear a lot of investment being made in this space, and a lot of stories of, we came in for the initial training and then we didn't get much after that. Some issues with this, although it's totally necessary, you have to lay down that baseline information. It can be costly and it's not super customized today. Then they go into the execution phase, right? And they're actually doing things. They're selling, they're maybe even doing practice exercises today. But the one area where a couple things we differentiate about this phase is that they're actionable and there's something on the line. They're either going to be judged or they're working on a real sale, right? And there's issues with this today in terms of how they're rolled out and how you analyze it and how you do it effectively if you're a sales leader trying to train a bunch of people. Third, the reflection phase. This is when you've actually done something and you're looking back on it and trying to figure out what to do better, right? And there's multiple challenges with this phase that a lot of companies have today. One to point out, though, that's specific to sales, that we don't see in other areas is, there's such a focus on driving revenue and forecasting calls and all this stuff that sometimes that can overpower kind of the reflection on how things went and how to do things better, right? And that's just a necessary part of selling. We get it. We're not saying like, oh, stop all your forecasting calls just to digest how reps can sell better. No, you have to do that. But you should also provide the infrastructure for reps to at least reflect personally on what's going on so that they're not just thinking, oh, okay, we didn't get the sale, but they're not really thinking about how to change that. So in terms of what we're going to present and show you real examples of, what we're suggesting you do and seeing work better is more focus taken from the preparation phase, pushed into the execution phase. And in the preparation phase itself, it turns out to be quicker, more customized, smaller chunks of information. Then you push more effort into the execution phase, so you have reps actually practicing exercises, you're working on them together, and then enabling more and building more around the reflection phase. So not only is the rep reflecting on what they've done, but helping each other, helping to teach each other without a lot of effort. So the first one of these, all right, as we dive into the how to actually do this, is the action-based sales exercises. Right? And these are exercises we have templates for. They're really, on the surface, they look like very basic things, but they expose what the rep is going to actually do in real life or is doing. Right? So an example of this is giving a rep an exercise to go build a demo, and you set some expectations for them. You give them some scenario, they plan the demo, that you communicate around it, they actually build it, and then maybe in another exercise they actually give it. The cost is very low for this, especially from an enablement or a sales management development perspective, because you're putting a lot of work on the actual seller, which we think is really key, right? Because that's what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to be self-motivated, do that stuff in their job anyway. It's very quick to deliver these type of exercises because there's not that much content behind it. It's more just guidance and instructions. And this is really one of the most critical parts. They're very good at validating what the rep's going to do. All right. So if you compare this to seeing that a rep watched a training or did a quiz, or someone mentor said, yeah, Dylan's doing a great job, that's all good, and maybe even necessary. But unfortunately, that doesn't really tell you how the rep's going to actually do those things in the field, right? And we've heard a lot of that where people are kind of confused, like, we don't get it. They did all this stuff, but they're still not doing well. You can use these exercises to validate. So we're going to show you an example of this. I'm going to switch over to Dylan, and Dylan's going to give you a quick intro into Navitome and then show you examples of these action-based exercises.
Totally. Hey guys, as Dylan mentioned, I'm the other Dylan on the webinar here today, and really great to be with you guys. Some quick background on me. I'm not nearly as experienced as Dylan Murphy. When you think about his experiences you talked about today over at IBM, but I did kind of get in the game really early in college. I started my own company, and out of necessity had to become the best salesperson. Right, had to be the only person out there. Really doing everything I can to create value for my company and get traction. And I really kind of learned things as I went. And since I've been at Navitome, I've gained a lot of new experiences. So I'm gonna turn my screen sharing on. Just give me 1 second here. And looks like it's up. And now I'm gonna show you guys Navitome itself. So today we're gonna be talking about a lot of stuff with how to train your reps more effectively, how to even within this quarter that we're in right now, how to boost effectiveness on the team without altering the product or the marketing or anything like that. Just kind of refining core skills of your field sellers. But before we dive into a lot of that methodology, I want to kind of set the stage and show you our tool. Which you don't necessarily need to do all the things we're doing today, but definitely makes things a lot easier. So this is Navitome. This is the dashboard you're looking at right now. You can see kind of a few things going on. There's a lot of communication and notifications built in. Authoring is a section where you can build out content, and that's kind of where Navitome started. It's a tool for creating online guides really quickly and deploying them really effectively with analytics. So you can think like, interactive PowerPoint with a lot of really cool stuff under the hood. So, we've actually already authored some stuff to show you here today. So I'm not going to go too far into that and bore you with the details. And I'm just going to jump to build and share. So right now I'm a sales manager or a sales enablement professional, and I'm trying to, do some form of enablement for our reps. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new build project in Navitome. We'll just call this cold outreach demo. And that's going to be the focus of it. There's a few different categories. No need to get into it now. This one we're doing is called a collaboration, which basically means myself and the person I'm inviting to this guide share a single copy of that guide. So you can see I just built that. I'm gonna open it up, and then I'm gonna pull a guide from our Navidocs. That's what we call them, as a Navidoc that I would have built in the authoring section, and I'm gonna pull from our templates. So this is something new, actually. These action-based learning templates we just launched like 30 of these that you can plug into what you're working with already today. And if I go to manage content, you can see kind of a list here of all these templates. And I'm just going to show you guys one, so I can really quickly just toggle off all these sections so that in the guide I show you guys here, we're not looking at 30 different things at once. And then I can just toggle these off and make it just cold outreach email. That's all we're going to focus on. So I can submit that. Navitome's going to, filter out all the stuff I told it to. And then I can go ahead and add somebody to this project. And I'm just going to add my other account. So right now I'm adding you can think of this person as a direct seller, somebody I want to train in cold outreach a little bit more. And that's kind of it for this side of the interface, right? If you already have content built out. Now I've sent this out, that person's going to get a notification and they're going to go ahead and do it. And I can kind of just wait and check my notifications and my communication until I see responses. So if I hop over to that account, you can see I'm in a new account here. This is kind of the direct seller. And you can see I got a notification. It said Dylan Husted granted you access to cold outreach demo. I can just click that. It's going to load up. And I have my own kind of personal, customized, by a professional guide for me to jump into for my training. And if I click view, it's gonna open it up. So this right here is like the end user view. This is everything I just showed you is kind of behind the scenes, what someone like you, if you're on the webinar today, something you might be creating. But now what we're looking at is what your audience would actually see. And this is kind of like a customizable welcome screen that we have pretty blank. But you can imagine it saying, welcome to your cold outreach training. I hit the next button and I'm into this activity. So over to the left, you can see we have prospecting is our topic and cold outreach email is our page. So, topic is like a chapter in a book kind of thing, table of contents. And then one page is more like an interactive slide in a PowerPoint. And this page is all about cold outreach over email. The idea here is instead of, or at least in addition to providing somebody with a bunch of videos and content about how to effectively reach out over email, you can actually give them a mock scenario with a real company and see what they would do. Just see in a controlled environment, right? Like how do they analyze, how do they critique, how would they reach out on behalf of the company? And in this scenario, we're looking at Amazon.com. Everybody knows Amazon. We have a fake scenario where they just opened a new branch in Boston. They have this new middleware service on AWS. So if we're Navitome and we have this sales training software, we might be thinking, okay, maybe we should reach out to them and see if they have a need for this, if they're hiring a bunch of reps and need to train them really effectively. So I'm going to open this image in a new tab just to make it easier for you guys to see. But we basically have 3 fake LinkedIn profiles here, and there's a account manager, right? A direct seller over to the left. So it seems like there's a lot of information on this profile. I could probably reach out to this person pretty effectively, but they're likely more of the end user than the buyer. So that's not really a fit. If I go all the way to the right, I see I have a VP of sales, awesome person to get in touch with, definitely a decision maker, maybe really hard to get in touch with. And then in the middle, we have a sales manager. So for Navitome, at least in my mind, I'm thinking, let me try to get in touch with the sales manager and see what they have going on. And I'm given kind of in this page a bunch of form inputs that I need to fill out. And then once I'm done filling them out, my manager is going to be able to come in and evaluate what I chose. So as I mentioned, looking at this image, I would personally go with John Manage in the middle there. Typing. And I'm asked, how would I reach out to them? I noticed their LinkedIn profile was open. So I might say LinkedIn because profile is open. Will follow up over email, if I don't hear back. And then just so I don't type all this stuff out, I have this copied out. But what I would do is I would create a quick kind of subject line and a quick fake email here for, my boss to evaluate. And so for me, just pinging off the work I've been doing at Navitome and the work I've done in my the company I started in college, the way I like to do subjects is let's start something really compelling, really quick that they'll definitely see, but it's right to the point. Right, tool for your account execs. I can see this person manages a team of 9 account execs, and they're focused on higher ed customers. So then I could say mastering higher ed sales tactics, and that I would think should at least get me an open a good percentage of the time. And then I have a body, message body that I'm going to copy in. And the idea here is, let's, instead of just pitching Navitome, when I look at this guy's profile, he's really passionate about social sales. He wants to be kind of a thought leader in the area. So I'm gonna tap into that and say, hey, John, great profile. Your passion for social selling screams off the page. And then I'm going to use a quick transition here to talk about us, right? How well have your reps done in mastering these techniques that you've mastered? And then a little bit about Navitome, kind of, easier language to understand. Your reps can put knowledge into practice before they take your techniques to the field. And then just right to the point, let's chat. And at this point, I would probably be done. But if I had a question, I could ask like, confused about X, can you help out? And send that in the Navitome chat. And then my boss could come in and we can have a conversation. But since this was really straightforward, I'm kind of pretty much done. So if I were to go back to the other side of the coin here, I can see from the manager side, Dylan Husted, started the action-based learning templates. I can go in and see what he worked on, evaluate this, right, and leave a note like, not bad, a little long, and then he's gonna get a notification, check that out, and try again. And I also will see that he did something, left me a note here. I can reply to that, and so that's the idea of this action-based learning concept, right? Like sales managers, sales enablement leaders, VP of sales, you've all kind of gotten to that point because you earned your stripes. You went out there, you were reaching out to people, you're taking sales calls. And when you bring in more junior reps, even though a lot of this stuff might seem straightforward, there's a lot of nuance to it. And there's a lot of little tips and tricks that you can pull. But if you just send somebody a big, set of, words to read or a video to watch to learn all these tips and tricks, like we mentioned earlier, like Dylan mentioned earlier, like maybe they'll, absorb 5% of that or 10% of that. And even if they really truly understood and remembered everything, there's a big difference between knowing something and actively doing it. So by kind of putting people through these mock scenarios, you might be surprised, even where current reps that are doing okay, kind of where they can get to, different tweaks in their approach and improve off that. So that's kind of the action-based learning process. But we're really gonna peel back the onion and go into this further in the rest of this webinar. But I hope this was kind of like a nice, quick introduction to what Navitome itself is. So with that, Dylan, I'm going to hand it back over to you, and then you can take it from there.
Yeah, that was great. Thanks, Dylan. I'm just sharing my screen now, so let me go back. So yeah, Dylan just showed a really awesome example of one of these action-based exercises you can share with reps, right? We just today finished publishing the 30 templates that we've built, and here's a screenshot of some of them. You can check them out at navitome.com/templates. And I'm not going to dive into them now, but the point is that we have them in a lot of different categories. Some are longer, some are shorter, some are for brand new reps, some are for more experienced reps, but you can get these out so fast and get feedback on what's really happening in a way that would be impossible, because otherwise you'd have to shadow all these reps, which you just don't have time for. So hopefully after Dylan's demo, you understand kind of the value and the point we're making around these granular exercises, right? But they have to live within really a bigger learning curriculum, right? Especially for newer reps, especially for people that don't understand that base content. So what we're talking about now is integrating those into your bigger learning plan, right? So an example of this, again, we'll use onboarding. Rep comes on, they need to learn some basic things before they can even practice these exercises, but then they also need to do these exercises. So they're going back and forth between learning and the exercises, but they're happening just at the right time. They're not overwhelmed with information, and the information is customized to them. So doing this on a bigger scale costs a little more. It's a little slower to develop, but it still has that really hardcore validation aspect because you're injecting those exercises. So now not only are you seeing that they did the training, but you're kind of getting feedback on what they actually do. So you just looked at the end user view of Navitome that Dylan showed with one exercise. This is an example of a bigger blended learning curriculum in Navitome. So this might be a new rep, and right now they're on a page that's talking about understanding the typical customer's pain point. And they have some text and an image, and then they have a video to watch. And then if you look on the left side here, the next thing they're going to go into is a quiz, and then they go into some reading, and then boom, they go into one of these exercises. So the exercises, what you need to do really is blend these exercises at the right point in the process. So it's like, rather than sending someone away to do 40 hours of presentation training, get 40 hours of presentations in a week, the concept here is break these into smaller chunks, have them do things they can digest, and then kick one of these exercises in. Then when you validate that they've done that, roll out more information that they can actually digest and take the time to learn, and then boom, hit them with another exercise, learn what they're actually going to do. Right? That's the big concept here, right? Is you break it down to make it really effective. They're not getting bored. They're not saying, oh, I can't digest all this information because you're dumping, it's information overload or drinking from a fire hose or all those things you hear. You're injecting these exercises where they go off and they actually do things to split it up, right? And the way you can do this in Navitome, this is an example where we make things much easier than other tools, right? But what we do is, like Dylan showed, you have this master set of content that we call a Navidoc. This could be like my onboarding enablement for sellers, and then I enable what I want them to do from the start, and then as they progress as their mentor or coach, I enable the next session. So you can see in this one, it's very basic stuff, and then when they get past this, maybe now I know they've effectively shadowed two calls with customers. Now I'm going to roll out practicing calls with customers. All right, so they don't get overwhelmed because they're not presented with everything at once and like, oh, this is what I have to do for the next 6 months. How am I going to do all this stuff? Blah, blah, blah. No, they get what they need to do, and then you enable more, and it builds up over time. They build their confidence, and you're on the same page with the seller. All right, so we talked about how to do these things at a very small scale, one exercise, how to blend them in. The next thing we're going to talk about is breaking those big trainings down into little chunks and delivering them in a way that sellers can use more in the moment. And we call this real-time sales enablement. So a good example of this is you're about to do a call in 2 hours and you're trying to prepare for it. And it's a call with a customer in a very specific, a specific industry, it's the customer's in a specific role. They have a few different types of problems that you know, and maybe the company's of a certain size, right? So this is all information that you want to use to build some notes before your call, right? And prepare for the call. Now, in enablement or training, you might have built all this awesome content that the seller could use to build some call notes and prepare for this stuff, but they're very unlikely to go back to a 10-hour recording or even like a 1-hour recording and listen through and get what they need, right? But if you break those things down into these small chunks, you can deliver it in a way where they can rapidly get what they need and piece together some call notes to prepare for that call in 2 hours. This concept is a little more costly to develop than the single exercises, and it's a little slower. It's not so much about validation, it's more about giving reps information in the moment. So this is the authoring canvas in Naviton, and you can see that the content in this screen is related to teaching sellers how to sell to different industries for my product, right? So I've got a topic on selling to financial customers, selling to retail, selling to manufacturing. And these are things that you could toggle on and off in delivering these to a new rep or when you want to learn. But in the context of these real-time sales enablement tools, what we allow you to do is inject these customizations into the authoring. So you now see over here, this green customization is a question, and we present it in the form of a question. And then you define the answers to those, and you link the content off of the answers. So what we're doing here is we're taking what might have been an hour-long presentation on the different industries and how to sell to them. We're breaking them down into these smaller chunks, and then we're injecting a question in that's going to allow the rep to customize the content themselves, and then we're linking the content off of the answers to those questions. So what this looks like in practice is now the rep comes to a set of enablement that's geared towards preparing for calls, right? So you've got you take this enablement content that you use for onboarding or other purposes, you repurpose it and you put it into a guide like this. And now rather than just being given all this information that they're never going to use preparing for a call, it's just too much, they start answering questions. So to our example, they say, it's finance, which industry, finance, which role, CFO, how big's the company, 200 to 500 people, where are they located, New England, and which issues do you know they have, issues 1 and 2. And then they hit next, and they're given a guide that contains only that information. So it's like a quick kind of call review to prepare for this call. So what you've done is you've taken this enablement material, you invested all this money in to teach people in the preparation phase, and you've presented it in a way that they can use in their day-to-day jobs. Right? And eventually they're going to know this stuff by heart and they're not going to come back to it. But in some of these combinations and with everything going on, it might take a while to get there. The other thing to point out, when you can repurpose your enablement content into this more real-time sales enablement, as we call it, the analytics become very interesting and very powerful. So let's take a baseline of what analytics you get when you give people a training video. Well, you're seeing, did they complete it? Maybe how long did they spend in each section? Did they complete quizzes? Did they complete survey questions? And that's about it, right? And you look and you say, okay, well, we invested all this money and all this time in this training, so now we know that 94% of reps watched it and we did a good job. Okay, that might be true, and that's actually something that you need to do, because you have to establish the baseline. But then when you present the content in something they do in their daily jobs, the analytics is really interesting, because the way they do that customization is telling you what information they need to sell in the moment. So imagine you're a rep, you came in, you want to prepare for this call, you tell the software, you tell Naviton how you want to customize this preparation sheet, and then hundreds of reps are doing this throughout the world, or if your team's 10 reps are doing it a couple times a week. Now after a few weeks, you have some really interesting data on how reps are preparing for calls and using that content. And in Naviton, we allow you to view that at the document level, and we allow you to view it on the individual level, right? So it allows you to make better decisions in terms of prioritizing what enablement content to come out with next. And even some business and product decisions, right? So now you have data that you can give to product management, you can give to development and say, look, a lot of our activity is going out selling to financial customers, but they need help, and this is what they're looking for in our content, and we have it, we don't, whatever the business decision is, and then you can prioritize your own content development and maybe even the product roadmap. So the last thing we're going to talk about in these changes we're suggesting is peer-to-peer sales enablement. Right? So it's well known that your sellers are going out having experiences that they could use to benefit other sellers. Right? So a quick example of this, you've got a seller in Brazil who loses a deal and shares her experience with 2 other reps in North America, and both of those reps are able to adjust, and they end up winning the business from their customers. Right? So speed of delivery, the way we're talking about doing this, it can be very fast. It doesn't have to cost a lot. And again, this one's not really about validation. It's more about getting that information out and empowering reps at the rep-to-rep, peer-to-peer level. One of the big issues with this today is the way that people try to deliver this and do this a lot of times isn't very effective. Or they wait to do this for like quarterly sales meetings or even annual meetings where they're like, oh, okay, well, I had this really awesome experience. Let me share it with you. Well, that was 6 months ago, and you might have lost $500,000 in business because other people didn't know that. They went out and made the same mistakes. Or, on a more positive note, we didn't know we could sell this way. So again, now we're in the authoring tool, and the way this would work is you have some sales leaders that are going out, having experiences. They're talking to a lot of the reps, or even, a more experienced rep themselves. They have an interesting experience that could benefit the entire field. They come into the Enablement authoring tool. Everyone's kind of subscribed to their guide, and they put information like this in. They click on paragraph, they fill out, here's the details on the deal, here was the problem with the existing solution, the barriers to overcoming them. And then they have a project that we call a cohort, and it's a slightly different project compared to the one Dylan shared. In this project, everybody has their own instance of the content. So when I go out and I'm a sales leader and I have this awesome experience that I want all my other sellers to know, I write about it. It takes me 20 minutes. I write up this quick, almost like a blog post, and then I enable it. Now the 5 sellers in this project each have their own version, so that it's private between me and the other people. And what that means is when I'm looking at the end user view, now if I'm a sales leader, I can actually help the person one-on-one. So I just published this experience that I had. Let's go back to this one. Say I had it in Brazil, and then I published this, and now somebody in North America is coming and commenting, and they're saying, oh, I have a deal just like this. Do you have time for a call, or can you help me with this? Right? And they're empowering each other in a way that's so simple that they can actually do it, right? And it's not this big messy wiki or set of blog articles that just gets lost in the mix, right? It's very personal and very fast. So again, this is kind of the peer-to-peer sales enablement example, and it's really about not only getting sellers to empower each other, but doing it very fast. So thank you so much for joining us today. I hope that everyone got something out of this. Again, we make it very easy to do this stuff in Enablement because we've focused a lot of energy on how to roll this out to big sets of people and customize things very granularly on big scales and do the self-customization. But the concepts are things that you can do regardless of tools, right? Make your sales enablement more actionable so that people get practice and you validate the ability and inject those actions in points that break up those bigger, tedious, less effective, long enablements, and then try to repurpose some of that content into things that people can use more in the moment, and put a little more work, if you can, if you're not already, into sellers empowering each other. And if you do that, you're really gonna be crushing it. And some of these things are things you could even be doing in terms of the activities. These are things you could be doing for Q4. So I hope everyone has an awesome Q4 and got something out of this. And you can reach out anytime. We're happy to dive in and help you do some of these things. Thanks a lot.